On behalf of Delta EE, CHP and Distributed Power Service team, welcome to our first webinar of the year, where we'll be sharing highlights from our latest Global Gas Engine Market Report. So Silvestros and I will be your presenters for today. But first, a few quick housekeeping rules. So the webinar should take approximately 30 minutes in total, and this includes 5 minutes at the end for answering questions. If you can't watch the entire webinar, that's absolutely fine. It is being recorded and will be accessible online from next week onwards. At any stage during the webinar, feel free to type your questions using the text box on your screen, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end. And if we run out of time, I'll send an email afterwards with our comments and answers to the remaining questions. The agenda for the webinar today, we've segmented it as follows. So we'll begin with a short introduction of Delta, followed by our view on the place of gas engines amongst other power generation technologies like gas turbines or diesel engines. We will then focus specifically on the global gas engine market and the market trends that we're seeing out there, followed by a discussion on the distributed power service, which is the service the findings we're talking about is based on. And finally, we'll close and have a little Q&A session. So, Delta Energy and Environment is a research consultancy specializing in heat and decentralized energy markets. So we help our clients navigate the transformation of the energy system, providing market data and forecasts all the way to things like strategy advice. Our client groups are primarily technology providers and energy utilities, but we also support a number of policymakers and financial institutions. So you can see some of the logos we've listed at the bottom of the slide. Now, how do we support our clients? This can be in the form of either subscription-based research services or multi-client studies, or it can be through bespoke consultancy, answering very specific questions relevant to the client. And while Delta EE itself covers many aspects of the energy system, Silvestros and I are actually part of the CHP and Distributed Power team, so the little bit circled in blue earlier on. Right, so it's only fitting actually that we discuss the global stationary power generation market today, and we're happy to do so. So there's over 100 gigawatt of reciprocating engines, gas turbines, and fuel cells installed per year for stationary power applications. So this includes both centralized and decentralized applications. So that's a big number, over 100 gigawatts per year. And of this, our research shows that the market for gas-based decentralized power generation could see significant growth to 2020, predominantly in engines. Now, this is set against a backdrop of more widely available natural gas supplies due to the growth of unconventional natural gas production, as well as the expansion of land and seaborne gas networks. So I'll pass on to Silvestros now, who will break this market down a little bit for you.
Thank you, Dina. And now let's start with the reciprocating engines. Based on the average between 2013 and 2016, we estimate that 50 to 60 gigawatts of reciprocating engines are installed per year for power generation, as shown in the third column. Out of this, diesel engines alone make up 45 to 50 gigawatts of annual installed capacity. It is clear then that for reciprocating engines, diesel is the dominant fuel, especially at the lower than 5 megawatt size bands. Gas engines make up less than 7 gigawatts per year, but are forecast to enjoy growth up to 2020. It is very unlikely, though, that natural gas-based engines will overtake diesel-based engines by 2020 in terms of annual installed capacity. Now, looking at the gas turbines, natural gas is already the dominant fuel. We can also see that reciprocating engines and gas turbines have similar annual installed capacity trends, 40 to 60 gigawatts per year, but reciprocating engines enjoy far greater numbers in terms of unit sales, as shown in the second column. Finally, the fuel cell market is still small in comparison, roughly around 100 megawatts per year. Now, the next slide, we highlight some of the key players in the power generation market. I just want to clarify that this is not an exhaustive list. It is clear to see that most major OEMs have a wide product portfolio. For example, General Electric, GE, has a range of reciprocating engines and turbines, which can operate on gaseous, solid, and liquid fuels. Some OEMs also take on CHP packaging, offering containerized units and operations and maintenance contracts, for example, Cummins. Others leave distribution and CHP package provision to specialty CHP packagers. And finally, Capstone enjoys a monopoly of the microturbine market.
Yeah, so that's a good summary of the players in the market. And actually, what we did was we asked some of these key market players why they thought a gas-based product portfolio was increasing in significance. And so we'll just highlight some of the quotes they've provided. So for example, one interviewee said that gas as a source for power generation fuel will increase, mainly due to its competitive pricing and because of its relatively cleaner perspective compared to other fossil fuels, and also its ability to support intermittent renewable power generation. Another interviewee said that he expects the gas engine market to overtake small turbines and take a large share of the market of medium-sized gas turbines. He also said that if we take a look at the second-hand market, the market for gas turbines has grown tremendously on the supply side, but there is a lack of demand. Conversely, the second-hand gas engine market is thriving, basically. Another interviewee said that the growth in power demands across Asia, Africa, and other key regions will support the need for affordable distributed power generation, and this can be in the form of diesel or gas gensets. So to summarize, 1, gas-based power generation is increasing. 2, gas engines are overtaking and heavily competing with small and medium-sized gas turbines. And 3, distributed generation is growing. And finally, 4, with this growth, so the distributed generation bit, compared to only diesel gensets having a monopoly, the gas engines are also set to win. Which brings us to our research findings of the Global Stationary Power Gas Engine Market Report. So just to briefly explain what the report covers, just in case you want to use the statistics in your own sort of presentations. So it clearly covers gas engines, and this includes all types of gaseous fuels, and it also looks at size bands above 400 kilowatts. So for the purpose of this report, we do not look at residential or light commercial units, which means that the actual global gas engine market is larger than the graphs shown in this webinar. Just to be clear what the report does not cover, so it does not cover gas turbines, and it does not cover non-stationary power applications. So for example, engines used in the marine or the construction sector. So again, I'll pass you back to Silvestros, who will describe the global stationary power gas engine market.
Okay, the global gas engine market for engines larger than 400 kilowatts is expected to grow to 6.9 gigawatts per year by 2020 and over 7 gigawatts per year by 2022. Now, just to make this clear, the chart illustrates annual installed capacity. Therefore, it is not the cumulative installed base. We have also totaled all the size bands into one size band. The compound annual growth rates for the global market is 4.5% for the time period between 2014 and 2022. But we've also listed the annual percentage change in the table below, as you can see. Now, the expected growth will be predominantly driven by 3 factors. First of all, strengthening or recovering economies. Our assumption here is that the economic strength of countries currently in recession or with flat economies will undergo a modest recovery to 2020, especially in the more established gas engine markets. Moreover, increasingly attractive spark spreads driven by electricity prices rising faster than gas prices. And finally, the ongoing trend towards more flexible and distributed gas-fired power plants.
So that was, predominantly there are many individual factors in individual countries that will cause growth or a decline in any market. So these are what we see as the global trends across all the regions and all the countries. But just looking at that graph, you'll notice there's a dip between 2014, 2015. It rises slightly in 2016, but there is a clear slump there. And I'll just explain a little bit on that. So as the slide said, the decline in the gas engine market can't be attributed to one factor. There's a number of factors here. So one of which would be the fragile global economy at the time and the ongoing uncertainty surrounding future oil prices. However, in this current climate, the prospects are looking a little bit better. A lot of economic institutions are forecasting growth, slightly improving global economic outlook this year and the period to 2020. So why is this important? Because in a climate of uncertainty, many projects get postponed, and that is an issue, obviously. So that's globally some high-level trends. But in addition, a few countries suffered quite a blow, and when big countries in particular undergo these sort of issues, then there's clearly a bigger impact on the global statistics. So for example, in Germany, the uncertainty surrounding the policy support for CHP, so the CHP law in 2016, that was a big issue. So during 2015, we witnessed a decline in gas engine sales, while the CHP sector was waiting for clarity on future policy support. But we expect an upturn in sales in 2016, 2017, 2018, and going forward. So better news there. Russia, there was a deeper than expected recession at the time, which impacted the gas engine sales. But again, a solid recovery is anticipated. For Turkey, gas engine sales fell in 2015 and 16 as well, mainly due to political instability, a weakening economy, falling energy prices, and a weak lira, which is the currency in Turkey. Brazil also, it is currently in a recession and is suffering from a weak currency, which makes it more expensive to import sort of foreign gas engines or spare parts. So the recession here is a lot more strong, so possibly not as strong a recovery just yet, but it's getting there. Right, so let's try and break down the global statistics numbers into regional sort of numbers. So Europe, and this includes Russia and Turkey for the sake of this webinar, is clearly the #1 region in the world with an annual installed capacity of approximately 1 gigawatt in 2016, so it's 1.356. The region suffered a blow in 2015 and 2016 as Germany, Russia, and Turkey, as I mentioned earlier on, each suffered various market barriers at the same time. North America is ranked second, with South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Pacific third, followed by Africa and Middle East, and East Asia. And actually, East Asia is set to almost double in size during the next 5 years, if you can see from the graph there, with most growth coming from China. And finally, there is South America, the final region, in terms of at least our forecast for gas engines. But in terms of size bands, these regions all have different growth areas and different applications where the engines are used. So, for example, the 400 kilowatt to 2 megawatt size band, so the smaller of our size bands, especially in CHP applications, are most dominant in Europe. Whilst distributed power-only applications for the smaller size bands, so the 400 kilowatt to 2 megawatt size bands, are dominant in emerging markets where energy demand is increasing and power shortages are common. Large engines, so very large, let's say larger than 5 megawatts, are more common in Europe and North America across industrial sites, district heating schemes, and in line with the ongoing trend towards more flexible and large distributed gas-fired power plants. So what we've tried to do is, if you can see the map on your slide, we've divided it into two size bands here. So there's the 0.4, which is 400 kilowatts, to 2 megawatt engines. And then the bigger one is 2 to 20 megawatt gas engines. So you can see the gray bit, which is North America. Let's take the large engines, for example. And then the orange bit, which is Europe, Russia, and Turkey. They have the most installed capacity per year. So it's the high hundreds of megawatt per year. Just purely, like I mentioned earlier, because that's where these applications are most dominant. Okay, so we'll just move on to now a little bit more specifically onto countries, and I'll let Silvestros talk on that.
So the USA, China, and Germany account for approximately a third of the global gas engine market today. We do expect that they will maintain their number 1, number 2, and number 3 global rankings in 2020 and likely in 2022. Now, I need to make a short note here. We have increased our market sizing estimate for China due to better intelligence in 2016 on the sales activities by domestic market players. So this explains China's rise in rank above Germany compared to last year's report.
Thank you. Yeah, Silvestros. So actually, I'd be interested to find out your opinions, if you are surprised, if you agree, if you disagree with China being number 2 in our pie chart. I'd love to hear that either in the text box or separately. If you'd like to email me, that'd be great. Okay, next slide. So, could the 2015 global market decline happen again? Well, in theory, yes, which is why the Distributed Power Service, which is the research, continually monitors any sort of major developments across the countries or regions or across the globe. And as of today, which is January 2017, some variables have already shown early signs of possible disruption. So the first being President Trump and a Republican-controlled Congress in USA. As I mentioned earlier on, I mean, the USA is currently the largest gas engine country market in terms of annual installed capacity. So in terms of new annual installed capacity, it's USA. So positive or negative trends here have substantial impact on our global statistics. So while no concrete change has happened yet, there are a few warning signs we should monitor and look out for. So for example, the US support for sort of action against climate change may weaken. I mean, President Trump has, how should I put it? I mean, for now it's still talk, but the fear is that if it's implemented into concrete action. So he has said that he will cancel the Paris Agreement. So since most distributed energy systems are also low carbon, so this is not the best of news. On the flip side, USA has many support programs and a lot of them are state-based and not federal-based. So that might help out in terms of weakening any of that barriers. The other point to also highlight is that President Trump is also quite keen on infrastructure spending. And the impact of this could go either way, actually. It could be good or bad for gas engines. So if we use the example of grid infrastructure as an example, so one thing that could happen is that there could be tons of grid upgrades in USA, which means it could weaken the need for power supply hedges in the form of CHP and distributed power generation. Or it could strengthen energy resilience, but in the form of many small power plant constructions using gas engines. So it could go either way, and we'll look out for that and keep you posted. The other thing to monitor is oil prices and its possible trending upward, from last year. As many of you would have known, it reached a low point of close to $30 per barrel, but it's slowly trending upwards towards $60 US. And in September 2016, the OPEC countries, so the oil countries, agreed to constrain supply for the first time in many years. So if this agreement holds, oil prices could enjoy a gradual rise. Now, how will this influence our global gas engine forecast? So, there'll be many ways, but two important ones are, well, first of all, the economic prospects of oil exporting countries will be much better. In addition, their currencies will strengthen, make imports cheaper. It will just have multiplier effects. The other thing is the effect on natural gas prices. So while global indexation of gas against oil prices continues to weaken, there is a clear linkage. And again, if oil prices go up, and if so, gas prices might go up, we'd expect this to have a negative, but actually modest impact on spark spreads. Okay, so just to explain a little bit about the distributed power service. So all the findings discussed so far comes from our distributed power service. And as of January 2017, we have produced 20 in-depth gas engine market reports, as highlighted in the map in your slides, all the way from Australia to USA. And we intend to add 3 more to the list this year. There's Bangladesh, Australia, and Pakistan. Now, the reason why we've chosen these 23 countries is a mixture of it, including some countries which are already healthy, matured markets, some countries showing tons of growth potential, or countries where our subscribers are either active in or planning to enter. So all 23 reports are available for individual purchase as a standalone report. And likewise with the Global Statistics Report, which summarizes the regional market. Okay, so that's us with the webinar complete. I'll just give you all 1 minute to sort of type in all the questions you have. And then I'll try and answer as many as I can. But like I said, if we're not able to, then I am happy to email you a separate email with all the answers. So I'll just give everyone 1 minute. Okay, so let's just have a quick look at some of the questions. Okay, here's one. You mentioned Trump and oil prices. What effect does Brexit have? Good question. So for those of you that are not aware of what Brexit is, the UK, so the United Kingdom, intends to withdraw from the EU, and this was based on a decision in June 2016. The referendum was held then. But the official exit actually will take quite a lot of time, probably 2019-ish. But it has caused an upset in Europe. But actually the two major impacts, the immediate impacts that we saw at least, and definitely in the UK, was that the pound depreciated, so the currency in UK, and this makes any imports of gas engine spare parts or equipment more expensive. And also there was a slowdown in economic growth. So these were the immediate effects. But actually our view was that at least for the 400 kilowatt and above power-only gas engine market, it's unlikely to be affected significantly by Brexit. So actually our forecasts for UK show a spike in sales between 2017 to 2020. And that's actually mainly due to the capacity market, which actually has more of an impact than the Brexit effect. In terms of the CHP market, UK is more reliant on sort of healthy spark spreads and building regulations rather than generous policy support. So, I mean, we do not anticipate any removal or dilution of EU-related legislation if UK comes out to sort of significantly impact the natural gas CHP market. But having said that, if the economy continues to weaken, this is a market dampener or on investment appetite, which might reduce some sales orders. But actually the biggest impact in UK, like I said, is not Brexit, but some of the changes in the capacity market. So the UK's energy regulator, which is Ofgem, is looking to remove or reduce embedded benefits revenue, which is something a lot of CHP and gas gensets, or any genset really, diesel gensets for that matter, enjoys and is a significant revenue source. The other thing it's planning to do is introduce a new regulations on emissions. This is to sort of phase out diesel engines from competing without directly banning it. And we've already seen the impact of this. So the third auction, which was held in December 2016, saw a shift actually. So out of all the new build that bid and won, about 2 gigawatts was reciprocating engines. And of that 2 gigawatt, 50% probably was diesel and another 50% gas and others, which means then that diesel actually performed much poorer in this auction than it did in the previous two auctions, which means Ofgem's sort of move in trying to phase them out is working already, and gas engines are winning because of that. Okay.
There's another one.
Another one. Okay, So, what has changed in Germany? Well, I assume you mean, did anything happen for China or US to sort of come in number 1 or number 2, or did Germany fall to number 3? And actually, it's a mixture. I mean, Germany itself, quite a few changes the last 12 months, each of which affect different size bands. So just to summarize for those who are not familiar with what has been happening in Germany. So after some delay in 2016, there was the reformed CHP law that was finally sort of confirmed and accepted at European level. So this ended a prolonged period of uncertainty during which very few CHP orders were made. And now that the reforms have been accepted, we expect a more stable market for CHP investment in the sort of sub 1 megawatt size category out to 2020. The other thing that happened was auctions are now introduced for CHP plants in the 1 to 50 megawatt size range. So what happens is they have to compete for support within a competitive auction process from 2017. So the specifics of this auction mechanism remains unclear, which as a result, I think we expect a drop in gas engine orders in 2017 for the 1 to 5 megawatt gas engines, while the market awaits further details. But in terms of larger gas engines, so bigger than 5 megawatt, we see a significant rise already, and we think this will continue out to 2020. We already see it in 2 projects. So there's the Kiel CHP project, which I think is 20 of GE Anbacker's 9.5 gas engines. So it comes up to 190 megawatt power plant. And then there's another project using 10 of Wärtsilä's gas engines. So it comes up to another big 100 megawatt power plant. So again, just to repeat, good news for the 400 kilowatts to 1 megawatt size band. Slightly bad news for the 1 to 5 megawatt gas engines, the in-between ones, and then good news again for the larger than 5 megawatt gas engines. And I think that's about half an hour. Apologies that we couldn't answer all your questions. I will get to it as soon as this webinar is over. Feel free to contact us on any of our email addresses or numbers written in the slide in front of you. And I hope you've enjoyed this webinar and found it useful. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.